In this episode of B.Hooked Crochet, we're going to make the dipped tip hat from Yarnspirations. This is a free pattern that's available on their website, and you can access the written instructions as well as the supplies list if you go to bhookedcrochet.com/dippedtiphat. I'll have everything you need right there on that page, or you can download it straight from yarnspirations.com. Just search for Dipped Tip Hat. Now, of course, I'm your host. My name is Brittany here at B.Hooked Crochet, and I can't wait to dive into this really easy. This is a beginner-friendly pattern, so if this is one of your first hats, I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. Well, let's go ahead and get started. To begin your hat, you're going to create a slip knot. So I like to just wrap the working yarn around my finger there 2 times, pull that back strand forward, and then grab the second one, pull that over my finger, then pull tight and place that loop on your hook. Now that loop never counts as a stitch. So we're going to make 2 chains to start off this pattern. So we'll just wrap the yarn, pull it through, then wrap the yarn and pull it through again. For round 1, we're going to find our first chain that we made, and we're going to make 6 single crochet into that chain. Now you can just work under that first loop if that's more comfortable. Grab the working yarn, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 2. That's 1 single crochet. Now we'll work the remainder in the same space. That's 2. 3. And we'll just work around as we go. So you can see I'm turning my work, just allowing me to work around in a circle. That's our 4th stitch. Our 5th, and we'll make 1 more. To finish off this round, we need to join with the slip stitch to our first single crochet. So you can see the V there, that's our first stitch that we made. We'll insert our hook underneath that stitch, yarn over, pull through, and pull through. And that completes round 1. To start off round 2, we're going to chain 2. And this chaining of 2 isn't counting as a stitch. Now with some patterns it does. This one specifically says in the notes section that our chain 2 does not count as a stitch. So you want to keep that in mind as we progress through this pattern. We're not going to be counting this as part of our stitch count. Now what we need to do for round 2 is we're going to increase every single stitch, and that's because of course we want our hat to grow from this point. We're going to do that by making 2 stitches into every stitch that we have here. So every single crochet from that first round, this pattern uses half double crochet stitches. So that's what we're going to use. We'll yarn over. We're going to find the next stitch. Now you do have a couple of different options. You can make your first stitch right here that is along with the chain 2. So you can put 2 stitches right here, and then you would end up here as being your last stitch. Or you can just skip that one, work your first 2 stitches here, and then these will be your last. That's what I'm going to demonstrate here, because if you start using this stitch where your chain is coming from, then you'll see that you'll have a spiral curve to your join, and that's really unsightly. It's very noticeable in hats. So doing things this way, just trust me, is much better. So I've made the mistakes already. I'm here to prevent you from doing the same thing. So let's skip that stitch right here that our chain 2 is coming from. We're going to work 2 half double crochets right here. So we'll just yarn over, insert our hook, and pull up a loop, and then we'll yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook. That's how we do a half double crochet. So one more time, yarn over, insert your hook in the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 3. Now you'll just make 2 half double crochet stitches in every single stitch. We'll have a total of 12 half double crochets. Okay, then once you have all 12 half double crochet, so 2 in every stitch, we're ready to finish off this round. We're not going to join with the chain because the pattern says specifically that we're not counting that as a stitch. So what we need to do is locate our first half double crochet, which is right here, and we're going to join with a slip stitch to that stitch. Now round 3 is going to begin the same way. We're going to chain 2, and actually all of our rounds are going to start this way. We want to increase again because we want our hat to continue to grow, but in order for everything to stay a perfect circle and flat, we need to increase at a certain rate. So the last time we increased every stitch. So what I mean by that is that we made 2 stitches into each one of the stitch. That's considered an increase. So what we need to do for round 3, in order to keep everything mathematically correct, we're going to increase every other stitch. So we're going to start off by increasing in the first. We don't want to work in this stitch here. So this right here, which really looks like the first stitch, that's actually where we joined with our slip stitch. So yes, technically it is the first stitch, but if we put our increase here and we work all the way around and join, that's when we're going to end up with that curved join. And if you've ever done that before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, just take my advice and skip this first one, okay? We're going to work 2 half double crochets in the next. And then we'll work 1 half double crochet in the next. So increase every other stitch. 2 half double crochets in the next. That's our increase. One half double crochet in the next. And just repeat that around. So when we get to the end of round 3, our last stitch is going to go right here next to our chain 2. And with that, we'll have a total of 18 half double crochets for this round. We're not going to join with that chain. Once again, we're going to find our first half double crochet and we'll join with a slip stitch just right there to that stitch. So go ahead and make sure you have the proper stitch count. You want 18 stitches, and we're ready to move on to round 4. So for round 4, we're going to chain 2 to start things off. We're going to skip that first stitch where our slip stitch is. We're not going to work anything there. We want to make 2 half double crochets in the next stitch. So we're increasing. And in this round, of course, we're increasing again, but we're changing the frequency once more. So instead of increasing every other stitch, we're going to increase every 2 stitches. So we've made our first increase. Now we'll half double crochet once in the next 2 stitches. And then increase on the third. So 2 half double crochets in that third stitch. One half double crochet in the next 2. And 2 in the next. And that's your repeat. Now when you get to the end of your round, you should have your 2 half double crochets in the last 2 stitches, so 1 in each of those. So I've just made my increase here, and then I have 1 and 1, and then that chain. So once again, we're not going to join with that chain. We're going to skip that and join with a slip stitch to our first half double crochet of this round. And at the end of round 4, we're going to have a total of 24 half double crochet stitches. So check your count and we'll move on to round 5. Now to begin round 5, we're going to chain 2. We're not going to work in the first stitch here. We're going to jump to the next. We'll put our increase there. So 2 half double crochets in the first stitch. And this time, once again, we are increasing, but we're changing the frequency in which that we are increasing for this round. So hopefully you're starting to see a pattern here. Whenever we work in the round for crochet, we have to keep things in a certain amount. So every round we're increasing in a certain number of stitches. The other thing to keep in mind is that every round we are increasing by the same number of stitches we started with. Okay, so we started with 6 stitches in that first round, and if you've noticed, we have increased by 6 stitches every single round. So for round 5 here, we're going to have a total of 30 stitches. Now for the repeat for this round, we've made our first increase. Last time we increased every 3rd stitch. This time we're going to increase every 4th stitch. That means that we're going to have 3 stitches in between our increases. Okay, so there's 2 here. That is our increase. So I'll make a half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. And then increase in the 4th. So 2 half double crochets in the 4th stitch. Now 1 half double crochet in the next 3. And increase in the next. And that is our repeat for round 5. And once again, when you get back to the beginning of your round, you'll end up with 1 half double crochet in the last 3 stitches. So there's my increase, and then work a half double crochet, in the last 3 stitches. And you'll see that if we aren't including that chain, which we're not, that our pattern is still consistent. So we have an increase here for stitch number 1, and then we have 1, 1, and 1. Okay, so there's the 3 half double crochets and then an increase. So let me just join with a slip stitch to that first half double crochet. And like I said, you can still see that chain back there, but the designer has worked it in such a way that it doesn't count in our stitch count. So our pattern is still consistent as far as how we're increasing. So at the end of round 5, I mentioned earlier that we have a total of 30 half double crochets. You just want to double check that and make sure you're on the right track. And we're going to start on round 6 now, and we're going to do that by chaining 2. We're skipping that first stitch there, which is where our chain is coming from, and we're increasing. So 2 half double crochets in the next stitch. Now for this round, we're increasing every 5th stitch. So we've made our increase there, and that means we're going to half double crochet once into each of the next 4 stitches. Then you'll work your increase, so 2 half double crochets in the 5th stitch. And then repeat 1 half double crochet into each of the next 4. and then increase. And just repeat that around. Now, just like before, when you get to the end of your round, you'll have your half double crochets, 4 of them in a row, and then you'll locate your first half double crochet stitch and join with a slip stitch to finish off round 6. Now, at the end of this round, we'll have a total of 36 stitches. And I want to take a second to jump to the written instructions, because at this point, things can get a little bit tricky if you're not familiar with working with a pattern that offers multiple sizes. So this pattern comes in 3 different sizes, and the instructions are all kind of within themselves. So I want to take you to the written instructions and just explain how you're going to handle that depending on the size that you're creating. So here we are on the written instructions, and we can see here that the pattern is written for 3 different sizes: child 4 to 6, 8 to 10 years old, and an adult size. Now, up until this point on the tutorial, we have covered rounds 1 through 6. So we've gone through the entire first section of the written instructions, and no matter which size you're creating, those first 6 rounds are going to be exactly the same. The next part, though, is where we're going to differ based on the size that we're creating. So we see this next section here. Our next instruction is for the size 4 to 6 only. Okay, so if you're creating the size 4 to 6 years hat, then you're going to work the instructions just as you see them here. This is the size I'm working on, so this is what we'll cover next in the tutorial. But if you're working on the other 2 sizes, the 8 to 10 years or the adult size, then you'll just flip over to the second page, and we just have a couple of extra steps right here. So if you're working on either of the other 2 sizes, this is going to be your 7th round. You're going to follow these instructions just as they're given. And don't worry, the technique is exactly the same as what we're covering in the tutorial. The only difference is the number of stitches that you have in each one of your rounds and where your increases are. Now, if you're working on the adult sized, then you're going to go on to an 8th round. And you're going to follow these instructions just as you see them. Once again, the technique is the same. The stitch count is what's different. Now, after we get these 3 little situations out of our way, then it all comes back together in this last section right here. So then no matter what size you're creating, then we're going to all work as the instructions are given right here. So in the next portion of the tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate the 7th round for the 4 to 6 size hat. Depending on which size hat you're working on, go ahead and follow through with the instructions as they're given to you. Then once we get through that 7th round in the tutorial, we'll pick back up right here and we'll finish up our hats. Now, once you've determined which size you're creating, we talked about me working on this 4 to 6 size. So my round 7 is going to be in the written instructions where it says the 4 to 6. So I just pointed that out. That's where we're picking up right now. We're going to chain 2. We'll skip the first one and work an increase or 2 half double crochets in the next. Now, as I mentioned before, the technique to what you're doing here for round 7 is all the same. So don't be too alarmed if you're working on a different size than what I'm demonstrating here. The technique is the same. It's just the frequency at which you're placing these increases that's going to differ from size to size. And for the 2 larger sizes, you will do 2 more rounds of increasing. So just follow the instructions as they're given to you, and just know that the techniques here are exactly the same. So for this round, we're changing up the frequency quite a bit. We're going to increase every 9th stitch. So we want to make 1 half double crochet into each of the next 8 stitches. Now once you have your 8 half double crochets, then we'll make 2 in the next, or we'll increase there. Now that's our repeat for this round. We'll make 1 half double crochet into each of the next 8 and then 2 in the next. When you're at the end of your 7th round, you will skip your chain 2, you'll join with the slip stitch to your first stitch, your first half double crochet, and that is going to finish off round 7. Now as you can see, you'll just want to flip it so that it lays in the proper direction. And if you're working on the 4 to 6 size, you'll have a total of 40 stitches at the end of round 7. And if you're working on the 8 to 10 and the adult size, you'll have 42 half double crochets at the end of round 7. Now, if you're working on the adult size, you will proceed with an 8th round. And you'll go ahead and do that before we get into that next section. So that's a larger size, of course, so we have to add an additional round to that. And so if you're working on the adult size, do that now. Follow the written instructions for round 8. The techniques are exactly the same that I've been demonstrating here. It's just the frequency at which you're adding your increases that's changing. Now, once you get that finished, then we're going to jump to the part in the written pattern where it says all sizes next round. And this is really simple. All we're going to do for this section of the hat is we're going to work 1 half double crochet into every stitch. We're no longer increasing, and we're no longer keeping track of numbered rows. From this point on, we're just going to measure from the starting point down, depending on the size that we're creating. So we'll begin by chaining 2. We're not going to work in this stitch here, this first one. We're going to work in the next, and you'll just make 1 half double crochet into every stitch. It's so easy from this point on. Now at the end of this round, once again, we're going to join with a slip stitch to our first half double crochet. And that's it. We're going to repeat that round until our hat measures a certain amount. And again, it depends on the size you're creating. You're going to start your measurement right here at the top, and you're going to measure down. Now, if you're working on the 4 to 6, then you're going to work it until it measures 7.5 inches. If you're working on the 8 to 10, it's 8.5 inches, and the adult is 9 inches. Once you get that finished, then come back to the video and we'll make one simple color transition, and we're almost finished. So once you've completed that big repeated section, we're ready to make our color transition. And I want to point something out to you. What you've probably noticed now is your join is shifting. And it really doesn't matter which way you start. So if we start with our first stitch right here, where the chain 2 is coming from, and end with our last stitch here, then we're going to lean in this direction. Or of course, if we work into the next stitch and we work our last stitch where the chain is, we're going to lean this way. Unfortunately, this is just one of the problems with not counting your chains as a stitch when working in the round. I have ended with my last half double crochet. I'm just going to insert my hook into the first half double crochet as if I were going to join with the slip stitch there. But we're going to go ahead and grab color B, and you'll just kind of fold it in half, leaving yourself a little tail, and then place that loop on your hook and pull that through the stitch and then through the loop on your hook. And now we can trim that first color, and before you move on, it's always a good idea to just tie the 2 ends on the back. That way it's going to keep everything nice and secure. You don't have to worry about your stitches falling out. And from here, you're ready to go. We're just continuing that last stitch pattern repeat. So that last row that we did, and we're going to repeat that a total of 3 times more as it's written in the pattern. So once again, just 1 half double crochet into every stitch. Work that for 3 more rounds, and then we'll be ready to just finish things off. We'll fasten off. I'll show you how to weave in the ends, and our hats will be complete. Now once you have worked all 3 of those rounds, we're just going to have one more round to finish things off, and we're going to chain 1 to start off that new round. And now we're going to be working with single crochet stitches. So we're going to locate that next stitch and make a single crochet there, and in each remaining stitch. So just make 1 single crochet in every stitch, and it'll just be a little finishing round, and we're just about complete. And when you've made it back around, you'll join with a slip stitch to your first stitch to finish things off. Now at this point we can go ahead and fasten off. So we'll trim that tail, pull that tail through the loop on your hook, and pull tight to secure it. And now let's turn it towards the inside. I want to demonstrate how to weave in some of these ends. You'll just have a few to work out. You'll just thread it on your darning needle. And what I like to do is just work down to a row where I have a bunch of stitches. So the really dense portion of the pattern, I just work my needle under some of the stitches, and I don't worry about getting it perfectly underneath each stitch. So you can see I've sort of split the fibers, and that actually works out better that way. So then it's also really good to just work back in the other direction. If you have a little bit of length, this is just going to make things a lot more secure. And then once you're finished with that, you can simply trim it off, and you're ready to weave in the other 2 ends. This wraps up our tutorial on the dipped tip hat. I hope you've had a lot of fun working this pattern, and if you have any questions whatsoever, please just leave them in the comments below, or you can go back to the website at that original link I gave you, and you can ask your questions there too. I spent a lot of my time helping you troubleshoot through problems, and it's one of the highlights of my day. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please leave them in the comments. And I want to thank our sponsor one more time, Yarnspirations, for just giving me the opportunity to teach you how to crochet this really great pattern. If you have any Yarnspirations yarn on hand, then you might find their website very helpful. You can go to yarnspirations.com and look through thousands of free patterns and video tutorials for knitting as well as crochet, and a lot of them have video tutorials just like this one. Well, on behalf of BHookedCrochet.com as well as Yarnspirations.com, I'm your host, Brittany. I'll see you next time.